Hey guys, what's going on? Today I'll be doing something that a lot of you students have asked me to do in the last couple of years. And this is basically answering the question of how to literally answer questions when you see the exam paper. So, like, if you're in the exam hall and a question comes up, pops out, what do you do? Which question do you choose? How to approach them? How to detect a hard question from an easy question? Technically, if you're doing higher level, then obviously all the questions aren't as easy as they are in ordinary, but still you can manage to detect if there is one sort of question that is much easier than the other. Um, so what I plan to do with you is this is 2018's question paper mock higher level English, and I would like to literally go with you through some of the questions in single text. So as you know, in higher level you'll get two sets of questions for each text that is prescribed on the Leaving Cert. In this sense, looking at 2018 King Lear, you see that there is I and double I, and one of them is definitely easier. Now I will show you techniques and ways to figure out which one is actually easier to pursue for when it comes to answering a question. Notice one thing, that this applies to every other text, not just William Shakespeare and not just King Lear by itself. Alright, so literally King Lear, William Shakespeare. The first question: Shakespeare's play King Lear provides moments of riveting drama that offer thought-provoking insights into the human condition. Alright, when you first read this, it sounds highly confusing, but let's see what goes on next. Identify three moments of riveting drama in the play that, in your opinion, provide thought-provoking insights into the human condition. Give reasons why you find these moments dramatically riveting and discuss the thought-provoking insights they provide. Support your response with reference to the play. Now, for a lot of students, the word riveting would be very confusing as they wouldn't understand what it really means, correct? Fine. Let's look at the other question and see if this one is easier. And then I can show you in a certain way, how to detect which one you can choose without risking your grade to a certain extent. Now, the other one says Cordelia plays a more significant role than Goneril or Regan in the play King Lear. Wow, so easy. To what extent do you agree or disagree with the above statement? So in your response, you should consider the roles played by all three sisters. Support your answer with reference to the text. As you see, it's much easier than the first one, and in this sense, you're very lucky because this question, like this set of questions, turned out to be much obvious in terms of understanding which one is clearer. However, I also noticed something with students, that a lot of students do not like characterization, do not like talking about a certain character. They prefer talking about the plot. So a lot of students would choose I instead of double I, and I would believe in a lot of sense that I is much harder to answer, not because of the word riveting drama or any of that, but because you'd need to talk more philosophically rather than simply analyze somebody's character and personality. So if I were a student, I would definitely go to double I and choose that one. But first I have to plan it out, right? So I want to plan it out with you and show you, how do I plan answering a question? How do I prepare myself for a 600 minimum word count answer that will probably get me an A or a B, so an H1 or an H2, if that is my aim. So one thing you have to know clear is that in higher level, it is almost impossible to secure an H1 because it is a language, and first level language, it's almost impossible to know 100%. You'll find that a lot of students who who study English on a daily basis and who need it for university, like if they're doing I don't know, let's say if they're doing literature for university or stuff like that, getting H2s at the end of the day and not H1s, and that is very normal. And you also find a very weird fact that many of the teachers who claim to know it all, including myself, would perhaps one day, if they resit the exam for the sake of fun, might probably not get an H1, might get an H2 as well. So there's no much of a difference in terms of H2 and H1, and it's a lot of the times it is a little bit subjective to the examiner as well. So like, I'm just trying to tell you that H1 and H2, there's like a very slight difference between them. So an H1 student might end on a good day get an H1, an H2 student might on a good day get H1, and an H1 student might on an okay day get an H2. So bear with me. Cordelia plays a more significant role than Goneril or Regan in the play King Lear. Fine, and I agree with that, alright? Why? Now I need to figure out what does Cordelia do to show that she plays a more significant role. Remember, this is a language of argument. Like now in this question, I need to agree or disagree, right? So what is the tone that I'll be using in answering this question? I need to find that. So is it an informative tone? Okay, yes, to a certain extent, I am using an informative tone because I need to tell the examiner about what Cordelia does, what Goneril does, and what Regan does, right? Yes, but what is the other part? I need to have that convincing tone. So that is language of persuasion. I need to persuade the examiner that yes, Cordelia plays a more significant role than her sisters. So language of persuasion and language of information are very important in this answer. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to figure out, why do I agree or why do I disagree? First of all, I highly agree. Now, the first thing that I want to say here, and I want you to notice what I will be writing, right? Typing, actually, sorry. So, Cordelia, the first thing that I want to do, pretend that this is a marking scheme that you are writing on, and just think of how you would approach this if you're using a paper or a pen. So, I would do this. So Cordelia, why is she important? Why does she play a more significant role? First of all, what significant roles does she play? So first of all, because of her, the entire kingdom is almost destroyed by evil. Why? Love test. She did not participate, or she refused, I can say. So as you see, this is the first thing. Because of Cordelia refusing at the beginning, King Lear banishes her. Because he banished her, she is able to marry France. And because she marries France, she's able to come back and save him. This brings me to the next point, where why does she play a much more significant role, is because she manages to save the king at the end. So she saves the king, alright? Or at least tries from insanity, alright? So from insanity and death. So she is the savior of the king. So definitely she does play a much more significant role than Goneril or Regan, right? Another thing that I have to add to this, Cordelia, there you go. So Cordelia, in this sense, saves the country. Definitely, because if it wasn't for Cordelia, France would have invaded it and invaded the country and saved the entire thing from collapsing, right? So because of Cordelia, Regan and Goneril are also dead. Why are they dead? Because, well, one of the reasons is because they're jealous over Edmund and stuff like that. But you can also argue that because it was almost over, Cordelia invaded and everything, you know, things are gone. So those are three very important points that I could talk about for when it comes to Cordelia and how she has a much more significant role. Now I also need to talk about Goneril and Regan and why their roles aren't as significant. So the first thing I want to talk about is Goneril. As you see, I'll just group them both, because remember, I am writing this essay and I don't want to focus on Goneril and Regan more than I focus on Cordelia. So I have three strong points about Cordelia, proving my point, and now I want to talk about Goneril and Regan, why they aren't playing a much more significant role than Cordelia herself, right? So in this sense, I would say that Goneril and Regan attempt to take over, and they do for a certain period of time, but fail miserably at the end. So this is very important for when it comes to having a significant role, because they betray their father, they do not succeed, all right? So the role that they have. But let me go back to the question. So it says Cordelia plays a more significant. What does significant mean? Important, right? So in the play. So what do you mean by this question? So do they play a better, like a more important role in terms of like reading it, making it interesting, or in the whole plan itself, or what? Anything that you provide in any, if you go in any direction for this question, you wouldn't have a problem at the end of the day. So if you say that Goneril and Regan's roles are minor, so I could also add to that, I would say that their roles, minor roles, all right? And I have to show how they have minor roles. So I will talk about how they, for instance, Goneril, like they kill each other, all right? So Goneril kills Regan. They do not, they go against the king himself. They are not, I can also argue that despite the fact, ironically, that Cordelia isn't on set most of the time, she is more important to the role of the play because she is the one that contributes to the climax. There you go. So I can add here, I could say climax. So Cordelia is the one that contributes to the climax, while Goneril and Regan end in a very simplistic manner. They just die, all right? I mean, of course, I'm not going to be writing it this way, so I'm just here saying it this way for you to understand how I'm thinking. So I need you to understand how am I thinking, why am I thinking this way, and what should I be talking about, right? Also, Cordelia marries the guy who saves the country, all right? But Goneril and Regan are very much simple-minded and they only look for their own good. Henceforth, they do not really contribute to the play because they're all self-centered. So I could say that they are also self-centered. So this means that they do not really contribute to the play in general, and they do not have a major role in the play because their actions are for their own good. Meanwhile, Cordelia doesn't put herself in the first place, and she is there to save something bigger, for a bigger picture. Her dad, her father, and the country itself. Like, there are so many other examples that I could use, but using only what I just told you, will get you a decent grade for English. You can also add on many other roles of both Goneril and Regan and how they contribute to the play. Well, there's always that counter argument, the devil's advocate, that I can always think, hold on a second, maybe I disagree. So maybe I could say that Goneril and Regan play a more important role. So if that happens to you midway question, that's a problem. So before you jump through on concluding if Goneril and Regan have a more significant role or Cordelia does, you have to plan it out and understand which side are you representing more and which side do you have more arguments for. When you do that, then start planning this, what I just told you about. Okay? So basically this is it, guys. The next thing I want to talk to you about is how do you structure your paragraphing for when it comes to questions like this. Remember, these questions are 60 points, right? So 60 point questions. How are you supposed to structure them? Remember, very different from ordinary level, these are essays, so they're not like 10 points and 30 points like the ordinary level have, but they are very much like structured in a manner of an essay. So you need to have at least 5-6 paragraphs, all right, at least. But how do you know to divide them? So paragraph separation is very important, paragraph division, because it accounts for your overall mechanics and language and mechanics for the marking scheme, okay? So the first thing that you want to look at is your introduction has to be rock solid. So in your intro, you have to technically mention your points of argument. However, by all means, do not ever say, in this essay, I'll be talking about... No, that you cannot do. So you have to say it in an indirect way. So, for instance, I would want to start this question by saying, I highly agree. Oh, this is something else. You can say that I partially agree with this statement and then argue both sides. So this is something that you can do as well. So for the sake of this question, I'm just going to say that I fully agree with the statement that Cordelia plays a more significant role than Goneril, and this is portrayed in the play for various reasons. One of the reasons is, and then I just continue naming, I would say she saves the king, and I look at my plan and I literally jot down what I have written here. So you're killing two birds with one stone, all right? Now, your second paragraph, after the introduction, you're arguing the first point. So, why is she significant? She saves the king, right? And then I'll compare that right away to Goneril and Regan, that they don't do anything. And then the third paragraph saves the country. And then the fourth paragraph maybe contributes to the climax. And then the fifth paragraph, I could talk about, I don't know, how because of her, the entire kingdom is almost destroyed by evil, about the love test and all that. So I can go back and forth, right? But at the same time, I have to talk about why Goneril and Regan aren't as important as her and do not contribute to a major significant role in the play. Get it? And then the conclusion has to reinstate the introduction itself, but in a different way. Do not ever copy paste your introduction and rewrite the same thing, but write the introduction in a way that write the conclusion in a way that contributes and shows that, hey, okay, this is what I think. I hope now you are persuaded. Well, you don't write it this way, but it has to have this meaning, all right? So this is very important for you. So the introduction and the conclusion are technically the same, but they are restated differently. Anyway, guys, this is all of how you need to know, or what you need to know for answering questions on any text when it comes to single text higher level. Let me know if you have any questions, and please drop them down in the comments below if need be. Thank you very much and have a good day.